Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu-Ewart. It's Friday, July 14th. This is Africa 54. The International Criminal Court is investigating reports that at least 87 people were found in a mass grave in Sudan's West Darfur state. Human rights groups in Kenya are campaigning for refugees married to Kenyans to obtain citizenship. And Music Time in Africa host Heather Maxwell talks to a Ghanaian reggae artist about a new category added to the Grammy Awards and what it means for African artists. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in Sudan, where the humanitarian situation in and bordering countries is dire as civilians continue to flee the heavy fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Security Forces. The International Committee of the Red Cross says an urgent humanitarian response is needed as the conflict enters its fourth month. Intense fighting in Khartoum, Darfur and other parts of Sudan has led to thousands of casualties, more than 2 million people displaced from their homes and hundreds of thousands of refugees seeking safety in neighboring countries, most notably Egypt, South Sudan and Chad, according to the ICRC. Meanwhile, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court says his office is investigating reports that at least 87 people were found in a mass grave in Sudan's West Darfur state. Prosecutor Karim Khan told the United Nations Security Council the ICC has the authority to investigate crimes committed in Darfur and is looking at violence committed there since fighting erupted in April.
If this oft-repeated phrase of never again is to mean anything, it must mean something here and now for the people of Darfur that have lived with this uncertainty and pain and the scars of conflict for almost 2 decades.
There have been numerous reports of violence against civilians, especially in the West Darfur capital of El Geneina. The UN says there is credible evidence that Sudan's Rapid Support Forces and an allied militia are responsible for the recently discovered mass grave. Sudan's ongoing hostilities is crippling the country's healthcare system. Approximately 80% of hospitals and health facilities are no longer functioning in most areas affected by the conflict.
We need to show that we're delivering more than words and promises. We need to show demonstrable action. And I've said this is going to be determined not only by the potency and the effectiveness of investigations, not even by the issuance of arrest warrants if judges of the ICC scrutinize any applications we present and are compelled to issue those warrants. But we need to see actual justice in court to separate truth from fiction and to give confidence to the people of Darfur that their lives mean something at all.
That was Karim Khan, ICC Chief Prosecutor. John Kirby, the U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, voiced strong concerns over reports of a mass grave found in Sudan.
We are deeply troubled by reports that we're seeing that the Rapid Support Forces near West Darfur slaughtered and then buried in a mass grave more than 80 civilians, 80 innocent people. This is completely unacceptable, and the United States will be obviously taking this up with our allies and partners and with the UN. But we condemn it. It's completely horrendous and unacceptable, and the Rapid Support Forces, they need to be held accountable for this.
That was John Kirby, U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications. It's campaign season in Zimbabwe, and the ruling ZANU-PF party is doing everything possible to woo youth voters ahead of the August general election. The election takes place amid a raging economic crisis, with soaring inflation rates making it increasingly difficult for ordinary citizens to afford daily necessities. VOA's Paul Ndiho reports.
Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is seeking re-election, took over as president in 2017, following the removal of Robert Mugabe, who had been in power for nearly 4 decades. The ruling ZANU-PF this week injected celebrity power into the campaign in an attempt to woo young voters ahead of a general election next month. Floyd Mayweather, a famous American boxer, was introduced at a ZANU campaign event in Mbavu, one of Zimbabwe's oldest townships, on the outskirts of the capital, Harare. The 46-year-old American former boxer thrilled the crowd with a public workout, which included punching and jumping rope. He also watched 3 matches from Zimbabwe's budding fighters. Some young people attending the rally pledged to vote for ZANU-PF.
I'm happy to see Mayweather here in Zimbabwe. It's the first time to come here in Zimbabwe to show people what he's able to do. So you can see most of the people they are doing what they are doing to show Mayweather, here in Mavoko we have talent.
However, the opposition party Citizens Coalition for Change says it continues to face obstacles on campaign trails. Allegations of political interference, including the banning of rallies and suppression of opposition voices, are raising concerns over the electoral process.
These people are angry. It's so painful we are being banned from holding our rally. But the ruling ZANU-PF party is allowed to do that freely.
The opposition immediately criticized the move as more evidence of a push by President Emmerson Mnangagwa and his ruling party to silence the opposition using the police and the courts.
What we want and what we are fighting for and what we are pushing for is for a peaceful election. What we are pushing for and what we have always asked and advocated for is a fair and free election.
As Zimbabwe heads towards the general election, analysts say the election's outcome will have far-reaching implications for Zimbabwe's political landscape, economy, and overall well-being of its citizens. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Rights groups in Kenya are campaigning for refugees married to Kenyans to obtain citizenship. The Kenyan constitution allows foreign nationals married to Kenyans to register for citizenship after 7 years of marriage, but they must have residency status to apply. Juma Majanga reports from the Dadaab refugee camps.
On a sunny afternoon in the Hagadera camp, one of the several camps in the Dadaab refugee complex, Fuzia Mohammed is busy at her shop. The Somali refugee and mother of 6 says she has been married to a Kenyan man for more than 10 years, but has yet to be granted citizenship. Lack of Kenyan documents, she says, has affected her life and business.
I am running this business to support my children and family, but I can't expand it as I'd like because I can't travel to Garissa town or Nairobi to buy stock since I don't have a Kenyan ID. I'm forced to wait for goods that come to the camp, which is very expensive. I have relatives in Nairobi, including some of my children, but I can't even visit them without the ID.
The Kenyan constitution gives foreign nationals married to Kenyans the right to apply for citizenship 7 years after marriage. However, a law passed by Parliament in 2011 adds an additional requirement that such individuals must have residency status in Kenya. This locks out refugees who do not have the same residency documents as other foreign nationals.
It is pure discrimination. I am married to a Kenyan and therefore have the right to be given citizenship. But for over 10 years, I have been denied that right.
Haki na Sheria is a human rights advocacy group based in Garissa. It has gone to court seeking orders to remove what it calls administrative barriers so that refugees married to Kenyans can apply for citizenship. Mariam Jamal is a program officer at Hakina Sharia.
In most cases, these individuals are people who have lived here, they have loved here, they have children here. So what does it really mean for them in the long run if they cannot access citizenship, despite the fact that their entire families are based here? Where else do they have to go?
The Kenyan government has been pushing to better integrate refugees into society, although the law blocking their path to citizenship remains in place. Kenya's Commissioner for Refugee Affairs, John Burugu, says a government policy allowing refugees to live outside the camps will ease their burdens.
The socio-economic inclusion solves the issue of them wishing to be citizens. Because what is maybe disadvantaging them is because of what we are currently running, which is the encampment policy.
Kenya hosts more than 700,000 refugees and asylum seekers representing 22 nationalities, according to the Department of Refugee Affairs. As the government moves to promote integration, refugees with Kenyan spouses like Mohammed are demanding what they say is their right to naturalization. Juma Majanga for VOA News, the Dadaab refugee camps, Kenya.
At a United Nations Security Council meeting last month, speakers urged member states to do more to counter the security threat posed by climate change. Meanwhile, in Chad, conflicts between farmers and herders from the Fulani ethnic group are flaring as warming temperatures further reduce the already scarce water and usable land. Henry Wilkins reports from N'Djamena, Chad.
In the countryside outside Chad's capital, N'Djamena, farmers and herders say they have noticed the weather change in recent years. It's becoming more difficult to farm with less rainfall and hotter temperatures. The UN says usable land for farmers and herders is diminishing, a situation that intensifies conflict between the groups. Farmers like Abdul Aziz Mohammed says it has become necessary to build nearly 2-metre-high fences to protect his crops from cattle.
We built the fences to stop thieves and idling animals from entering the farm. Mostly the biggest challenge includes the presence of idling cattle. The herders are armed with knives and weapons.
Experts say that herder and farmer disputes made worse by climate change have been linked to much of the insecurity in the Sahel in recent years. Yet many on both sides seem unaware of the effects climate change is having on their lives and instead look to God for solutions.
I don't know exactly what's causing the problem with weather here. We need rain for sure. Yes, we pray to God every day and ask Him for water. That's all we can do.
In recent years, the UN Security Council has begun to discuss how it can address climate change in the context of promoting stability. Janani Vivekananda, head of programme for climate diplomacy and security at Adelphi, a Berlin-based consultancy, points out the Council has yet to adopt a resolution outlining how it will deal with the problem. Recently, the Malian government asked the UN peacekeeping mission there to leave after it failed to reduce violence believed to be caused in part by global warming.
I think Mali is unfortunately an excellent example of how peacekeeping and stabilization forces has just not been fit for purpose, because the ways in which climate change affect the conflict, understanding those root causes of the conflict, climate change has been undermining already stressed livelihoods.
Experts say insecurity caused by climate change and fights over resources like water and land are likely to get worse.
We have a very clear picture that a lot of security-related dynamics like riots, communal violence are linked to the impacts of climate change. They are part of the story.
He went on to add, this is a today problem, and it's a problem that's going to be increasingly severe. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, N'Djamena, Chad.
U.S. President Joe Biden is back in Washington after a 5-day trip to Europe that included a visit to Britain with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and King Charles attending the NATO summit in Lithuania and a visit with Nordic leaders in Finland. The war in Ukraine is casting a pall over Europe's future. VOA's White House bureau chief Patsy Widakuswara has more from Helsinki.
President Joe Biden swung through Finland's capital, assuring NATO's newest member of the alliance's commitment. He sought to calm European fears that a change in U.S. administration may mean uncertain transatlantic ties.
I absolutely guarantee it. There is no question. There's overwhelming support from the American people.
Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, once called NATO obsolete, creating anxiety among allies. Now there are 2 more members of the alliance, with Sweden set to join soon. Finnish President Sauli Niinistö said the country feels more secure.
We have 80% of population supporting NATO membership and more than 80% who say that we will also protect our allies.
Protection from aggression by Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom Biden said already lost the war on Ukraine.
Putin has a real problem. How does he move from here? What does he do?
That's another departure from Trump, who met with Putin in Helsinki 5 years ago and said he believed Russia did not interfere in the 2016 U.S. election, despite U.S. intelligence evidence. In Helsinki, Biden also met leaders of other Nordic nations, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland, who are all now NATO members. He returned to Washington Thursday evening. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Helsinki.
Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, in our entertainment report, Heather Maxwell, host of VOA's Music Time in Africa radio program, has some exciting Grammy music news. We'll be right back.
The FIFA Women's World Cup 2023 is set to kick off in Australia and New Zealand. Morocco and Zambia are making their debut, while Nigeria, along with South Africa, make their triumphant return to the tournament. Yet all eyes will not only be on the playing field, but on FIFA itself. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we'll take a closer look at the upcoming Women's World Cup Games and see if FIFA will keep its promise to be more inclusive and pay big money to their female players. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other African news, South Africa's Constitutional Court has ruled that former President Jacob Zuma's early release from prison because of claimed medical conditions was unlawful and that he should return to prison to complete his 15-month term for contempt of court. Zuma was sentenced in June 2021 after refusing to testify before a panel probing financial fraud and cronyism under his presidency. Ivory Coast officials say they have stopped selling contracts for cocoa exports for the 2023-2024 season following recent weeks of heavy rains, battering and flooding farms. Ivory Coast, the world's top cocoa producer, is reliant on cocoa because it accounts for 40% of its export earnings. And Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, in an address late Thursday, accused former Democratic Republic of Congo President Joseph Kabila of giving sanctuary to the Allied Democratic Forces, an Islamist fighters group, for allowing them to exploit minerals and timber to build their strength. Kabila has not responded to the accusations. The FIFA Women's World Cup kickoff is on July 20th in Australia and New Zealand. 32 teams, the most ever, are competing in 8 round-robin-style competitions, followed by knockout rounds for the remaining teams. Australia and New Zealand are the first nations to co-host the event. VOA's Anthony Labruto has this preview.
Africa is sending 4 formidable teams, Morocco, Zambia, Nigeria, and South Africa, to what is billed as the biggest event in women's soccer. 2 of those teams, Morocco and Zambia, are making their debut as underdogs to the world stage to try to take home the gold. The Zambian team is especially eager to begin their battle for glory.
Mostly, I think, as players, our mind is just on the pitch. The rest we leave to the management, and whatever comes up, it's up to them. Our job is just to work on the pitch.
Zambia's Copper Queens have a tough road ahead of them to win big. As participants in the Group C round, they'll face off against experienced teams like Spain, Costa Rica, and Japan. But what the team lacks in experience, they'll find in star players Grace Chanda and Barbara Banda. Morocco's efforts to develop local talent have finally paid off after creating 2 professional women's leagues in 2020. They'll enter their first cup alongside manageable opponents South Korea and Colombia. Both South Africa and Nigeria have the benefit of prior World Cup experience under them, with each team making appearances in 2019. Nigeria enters the tournament under what's considered to be the toughest grouping, with Canada, the Republic of Ireland, and Australia as opponents. As the Africa Cup champions, South Africa hopes to use the victory as momentum to propel them to their Group G battles against Sweden, Argentina, and Italy. Nigeria will be the first African nation to start in the Women's World Cup in the first day of matches against Canada, followed later in the day by Zambia and Japan. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Members of the Actors and Writers Union, SAG-AFTRA, and the Writers Guild of America are taking to the streets Friday after their leaders voted unanimously to go on strike, primarily over the pay and the use of artificial intelligence to replace their work. Members picketed outside of Netflix in Los Angeles and cheered when union leaders officially called the strike. The strike is the first for film and television actors since 1980. It is also the first time that 2 major Hollywood unions have gone on strike together since 1960, when former U.S. President Ronald Reagan was the Actors Guild president. SAG-AFTRA represents more than 160,000 actors, broadcast journalists, announcers, hosts, and others. WGA has been on strike since talks collapsed and their contract expired on May 2nd. It's time for our entertainment report, and Heather Maxwell, host of VOA's Music Time in Africa radio program, updates us on a new category for the Grammy Awards. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Esther. That's right. I have some exciting news for both Africa and the United States. And I took a trip to the Western U.S. to bring it to you. I'm here in Los Angeles, California, with recording artist from West Africa, Rocky Dawuni. The Recording Academy just added a brand new category, Best African Music Performance, for the Grammy Awards. Let's find out what this means for Africa, America, and for Rocky, a 3-time Grammy nominee whose music bridges both cultures and continents. Hello, Rocky. It's great to have you on location here at VOA in Los Angeles.
Thank you very much.
Now, you've been nominated for a Grammy 3 times now.
Yes.
This year
for Never Bowed Down, and in 2021 for your album Voice of Boom Boom, and then in 2015 the first one for Branches of the Same Tree. Now these were all in different Grammy categories. Never in this brand new one, Best African Music Performance. So in 3 words, how do you feel about this new category?
I think it's inspirational, it's timely, progressive.
And so let's break this down. First, inspirational.
Inspirational because this provides an outlet and a recognition that what they're doing and its impact is being recognized not only within the continent but without the continent. And I feel that that's going to go a long way to also stem a tide of more music
and to
impacting.
inspire
more, creativity.
More artists. Oh, that's beautiful.
It is a timely intervention, but it's also the first step of probably many to come.
What about progressive?
Progressive, I think it's in terms of, you can't have an award system, that reaches out to show excellence in first of all in American music and also global music.
Global music.
Without integrating creatives from the mother continent.
Since your Never Bow Down nomination, what is Rocky Dawuni most excited about right now?
Oh wow! One important thing too that I'm working on is I'm in the process of building a cultural innovation hub in the mountains of Ghana in Eburi.
Returning back to the topic of the Grammys. Do you have any predictions for 2024? Who do you think's going to be at least nominated?
It's actually tough for me to give names just because there's
too many.
There's too many.
What about styles? Because it's all about the music. It's about the outstanding recording.
The outstanding recording. High life music will have a very strong opportunity. So we're talking of Afrobeats, and then Amapiano is making a lot of headway.
All across the continent.
All across the continent.
I mean, it started in South Africa, but now it's
everywhere. But in the long run, I think it's going to be about songs that touch the hearts of people. That's what music is about.
That's wonderful. Rocky, thank you so much for being on the show. Voice of America here in Los Angeles. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
And that's all for this week's entertainment. Esther, back to you. Thanks, Heather. Be sure to join Heather Maxwell's Entertainment Reports every Friday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show this Friday. We invite you to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. Have a great weekend.